You swear allegiance. That's a very human level understanding to a country and a flag and a constitution. But when we believe in Jesus, we are committing ourselves to a life of fidelity to a king who has a kingdom, and I am embracing citizenship in his kingdom. It is not just a checking of a box. It's a radical transformation of who I am. And I remember, because it was very soon after that, I traveled on a ministry trip to Bulgaria, and I used my American passport for the first time, and I was able to put it down at the passport control in Bulgaria, and you know, I realized I don't sound American. I wasn't born here. I wasn't socialized here, but I had chosen to align myself with all that America is, warts and all. Because anybody looking at me say, well, you're an American. Yes, I'm American. And I've chosen to identify myself with this country. Well, when we come to Christ, when we believe in Jesus, we're standing up and saying, I'm with him. I'm with him. So these people, they have a reaction. When they say, he says, you're going to die in your sin, they're not happy. And so we go to John 8:25, the first part of the verse, 25a. That's what the A means, not the whole verse. So they said to him, who are you? This is one of the most profound questions you find in the Bible, and there are a few questions in the Bible, not many, that are absolutely like history turning. This is one of them. Who are you? And I would have loved to have been a fly on the proverbial kind of camel there, to just say, how did they say that? What tone of voice did they use? Was it ignorance, like, who are you? Or was it arrogance, like, who are you? Who do you think you are? How did they say it? Was it offended? Did they say it in an offended way? Was it perhaps just plain old confusion, like, who are you? Have we met? Or was it intrigue? We don't know, because the tone doesn't come through from the text. But it is the valid question that it is. Who are you? And we're going to come back to that when we end today, the importance of that question. Because another man asked that question. So we're going to leap to a man called Saul of Tarsus. This was a man who was, in terms of Judaism, he belonged to the Pharisees, an incredibly strict religious party. He regarded himself as a man who lived to the highest code of religious behavior, rhythms and patterns, that he regarded himself as faultless in observing not just the rules, the tightest, meanest definition of those rules. He said, you couldn't find fault with anything in my life according to, Judaism as the Pharisees understood it. And he had got a kind of a moral fire stirred up in him, because he felt that these Jews who were turning to believe in Jesus as the one, as the Messiah, this was wrong. It was a mess. It needed to be stopped. This whole movement of these sort of messianic, people, Jews who believed in Jesus as Messiah, this had to be stopped, dead in its tracks. And there was a bit of an uprising, and some of them got hold of a man, Stephen, and they dragged him out, and they were stoning him to death for blasphemy, for heresy. It's not a happy scene. Brutal. And the scripture tells us in Acts 8 verse 1, and Saul approved his execution. He was there, and here's another rock, here's another stone. Throw it again. He's not dead yet. Finish him off. And it was not a happy scene. And then Saul, in the next chapter 9, verse 1, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, he goes to the authorities, he gets letters of authority, and he sets off on a journey to the city of Damascus so that he can arrest these Jews who are believing in this Jesus, and he dragged them back to Jerusalem for some sort of trial or lynching, and his blood is up. He's going to kill this Jesus thing once and for all. But then this man of deep religious rhythms meets Jesus on the road to Damascus in some kind of spiritual encounter. And God interrupts the habits and rhythms of his life. And it may be that this morning, before you can behold Jesus, you need to have God interrupt the rhythms of your life. Because only when he stops us in our tracks and we're on our knees, and then chapter 9, verse 5, Paul asks the question, who are you? The text adds the word Lord, which in the Greek really simply means not that he's like worshiping Jesus. He doesn't even know who Jesus is. He just thinks Jesus is a Jewish rabbi with messianic complex who had rightly been executed by the Romans. He uses the word Lord just as some superior person in another rank of society. It has a broad application. It's not spiritual or religious necessarily, but the question he asks is, who are you? And so he has this encounter with Jesus. It results in surrender. It results in commitment and fidelity and profound change in his life. And so when we go to Acts chapter 9, sometime later in this man's journey, he decides he's got to go back to Jerusalem where it all started, and he'd set out for Damascus from Jerusalem, and he attempted to join the disciples he'd been killing or involved in the killing thereof. And they were all afraid of him, for they did not believe that he was a disciple. I mean, just imagine, use your holy imagination. So they're all now known later Paul the apostle, but right now he's like this unknown entity. The last time they saw him, he was Saul of Tarsus. He was out to kill people who believed in Jesus. Now he arrives back in Jerusalem and he says, surprise, I'm a Jesus follower. And it's like, no. No. Pull the other leg. No, really, I had this whole, thing happen on the road to Damascus, and I'm a new man. Really? They were not convinced until someone else spoke up for him and said, no, it's true. He's been on a journey, man. He was struck blind and he was prayed for in Damascus by an obedient disciple who was listening to the voice of the Spirit. And there's this whole story that happens that brings Saul to Paul. And so Paul says, I'm gonna go back to Jerusalem and tell the guys the good news. And they're like, wait a minute. Where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? This was a man with a past. But Jesus had given him a future. I didn't say this at the 9 o'clock service, but let me say it here today. A coin has two sides. It's like redemption, like salvation, like the gospel has two sides. The one side of that gospel currency is Jesus dying for my sin and paying my debt. But the other side is Jesus purchasing a preferred future for you. A coin with only one side has no value. You need both. And so he was a man with a past, but Jesus bought him a future. And we are sitting in this room today because Jesus bought a man called Saul a future. And he embraced it.